All right, business owners, do you fall into the camp of any client is better than no client? Because I want you to listen up to this. I'm going to challenge that mindset that any client is better than no client, because at least I'm doing work and there's a hope that they will pay. And I want you to replace that with the right client is worth more than 10 difficult clients on an emotional basis, on a financial cost, all of that. So last week I did an episode on how to get clients to pay, and at the end I said that I would be challenging the mindset that a client who doesn't pay is the client's fault, with the fact that I believe that a client who doesn't pay is not the client's fault. It's actually going to be the fault of the business owners to a degree. There are obviously going to be, offshoots or not offshoots, like those random outside of the bell curve people who. Anyway, so basically what I want to prove in this episode is that you have power over whether or not people pay you. And I'm going to show you how to know if somebody's going to pay you ahead of time or not. Okay. So my name is Andrea Pearson. Welcome to my podcast. Whether you're a business owner, a creator, or anyone who refuses to settle, this show challenges common mindsets and common ways of thinking so that you can achieve success in all areas of life. Make sure you're subscribed to follow future episodes, all of that. Sorry, I'm stuttering my way through things. It's over 80 degrees in my office right now because our AC is dead. And if you were listening to last week's episode, I'm recording it on the same day. So it's still dead because it's only been 10 minutes since I've recorded the last episode. Anyway, so I'm doing a series of episodes right now geared to business owners. And I do a lot of my topics are all over the place with all sorts of different things, and the whole goal of my podcast is to help you find success in all areas of life. So I want to put this out there. A client not paying isn't always the client's fault. It is, a lot of the time, it is actually the business owner's fault. And before you get super angry and comment and say you're a liar and you're an idiot, I want you to hear me out. So how to pick the right people. You're going to want to create minimum standards for who you will work with. And what does that mean? So first off, do not be desperate. Like a lot of the times, if you're paying attention to your intuition or your gut feeling is going to tell you, hey, this person, there's something off about them. And if you get desperate, you tend to ignore those things. And so you want to make sure you have a list of your ideal client. What are the things that you're looking for in a client? What makes, take your clients that have done a really good job, your patients, customers, whatever, that have actually paid you on time. Write down things about them and then look for patterns and make that be your ideal client. And make sure that you're setting standards and you're letting them know what your standards are. And you're going to do that through your contracts, right? Let them know what you expect when it comes to deposits and when it comes to communication, and make sure that like you're creating these minimum standards and you know what you want when it comes to communication, and you want them to communicate on a timely basis and respectfully. And this is going to help you know whether these are your ideal clients or not. Are they following up? Are they answering your messages? And then also make sure that you kind of feel them out when it comes to their desire and ability to pay you. Just kind of pay attention to how they reference and how they talk about money. If they're backwards about money, if talking about money makes them uncomfortable, if they're not willing to discuss, how you expect to be paid, all of that, then that's a red flag, right? Another red flag is if they try to get a deal from you. And I'm going to go more into all of those types of things, like how to know if somebody's not going to pay you or not later. But make sure the whole point of this part of this episode is to set your standards and follow those standards when you're working with people, and to not get desperate. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is to require deposits from new clients. You don't know if this person is going to pay you or not. And I've talked before on my show about requiring people to pay up front. I personally prefer from the customer side not to pay until I know whether or not they're going to follow through. But that's because I've had people not follow through, and I've heard a lot of horror stories of people not following through after receiving payment. I think there's a sweet spot in there, though, where if you're like working the trades, if you are doing construction or something like that, where you have them pay for materials ahead of time, and then you pay, and then you expect them to pay you for your labor afterwards. That way you're out the time you put in, but you're not out for the material. Also, pay attention to the behavior during the sales process. Is there something that makes them uncomfortable? Is there a gut feeling where when you're talking to them, you're like, okay, so this person, I don't know if I can trust this person. So make sure you pay very close attention to that. And again, how they approach the conversation of money, like I was saying earlier. Okay, so clients who are more likely to pay. This is the where I wanted to get into the list, so you know if this is a person, when you're talking to them, if you're going to know that this is going to be somebody who is more likely to pay or not, right? Okay, so they respond promptly. I've already talked about this a little bit, to your emails and your messages. And promptly does not mean within the first 5 minutes. You're going to have to decide what is prompt for your business and for what you will tolerate. But for me, it's within that day, or they have, within the next 24 hours or so. So responding promptly to emails and messages within a day or so, okay? Now, they respect your processes and deadlines. And that could be, they can show that kind of respect ahead of time, by, that's fair. Like you can say, this is what my deadline is, this is what my process is, and this is where I'm going to expect payments. This is when this is going to happen. And if they're like, okay, all right, that's agreeable. But if they get a little uncomfortable about it, then that's a red flag. Also, they ask good questions like about deliverables. So when is it going to be done, and what condition should I expect it in, and at what point will this part of the project be completed, and how will I know the work is done, and will you be, and this is them asking you, will you be on site for me to ask you questions, things like that, if there's any concerns that come up. People who ask good questions about expectations are more reliable, because that means they're thinking things through, so you can understand whether or not, like if they're thinking about, that far in advance, or if they're just, concerned about whether or not you're going to do the work, and they're not even thinking about, what for them to expect. Part of it is if they've never worked with a contractor before, and some of them might not know what kind of questions to ask, but that can be a red flag, but it also could just be a sign of inexperience. And so you can engage them on those types of things and get them to be more curious as you share information with them, to see if it's basically you gauging whether or not they're just inexperienced and they want that kind of information, or if they're just not going to be a good client. Next, they don't push back on every policy you have. That is definitely a red light, right? A warning sign. All right, so if they have a history of hiring professionals, that's good. That means that they know what to expect and what to think. So, and I already mentioned, it's their first time. So that can be a red flag if they've never hired anyone before. If they make decisions relatively quickly, the more they deliberate, the more likely they are to be, I'm sorry to say this, flakier when it comes to paying on time, because if they're slow in answering things and slow in making their minds up, that could mean that they're not fully on board, which means they might nitpick and find problems and not actually pay you later. Because if they know what they want, then they're going to be able to tell you what they want, and they'll be able to correct you if you go into something that they don't want. And this is all a sign of somebody who's going to be more likely to pay. Also, do they have an actual budget? Do they have an expectation for how much it's going to cost? Have they talked to multiple people? If they've had multiple people come give them estimates, and they know roughly about what it's going to cost, and they have a way to pay that cost, then they're going to be more reliable. They willingly sign contracts and pay deposits. If they throw up a big fit about any of that, then that's a red sign. Okay, so now warning signs that someone may not pay. They immediately ask for discounts. Guys, if they're trying to get services, or they're trying to get free stuff, or they're trying to get your work for cheaper, then that is a red sign that they might not actually pay. If they complain to you extensively about previous providers, some complaining is fine. I will admit that I complained to Jason, my contractor who does our exterior stuff. I've complained to him lots about other people, other providers, but I did not complain to him the first time I met him. And that is a warning sign. If they complain a lot, then that is a warning sign. If they resist contracts or any written agreement, that is also a warning sign. That means that they're not going to be because they know it's more legally binding, and they don't want to be bound to it. They want work started before payment is received. And again, sometimes I don't like to pay ahead of time because I don't want to be screwed over, but also I do recognize that most people need to be paid for materials ahead of time, and it's very, very, very rare where I say, hey, I need to actually know that you're going to be doing the work. And so if you run into a client who's more like me in that way, then there's other ways that you can help reassure them that you're legitimate and that you're not going to scam them, and that's going to be through your open, very, very open communication, and letting them know, giving them regular, sometimes even daily updates about what is going on. You can show them and reassure them that you are not going to scam them by you being a good communicator and you being a good business owner. Okay, so they frequently say things like, okay, just trust me on this, or we'll work it out later. Those are definitely red flags. If they are ever difficult to reach during the sales process, so if you have something come up that needs immediate attention and they don't respond, and you call them or email them or text them and they still don't respond, that's a big warning sign. They constantly change requirements or expectations before the work even begins. Like if they're wishy-washy on what they want, that's also a red sign. You don't want them to be wishy-washy. You want them to have good expectations and to lay out what they're expecting from you and the work they want to receive. Or if they seem disorganized financially, like if and I don't even honestly know, like just pay attention to warning flags, things that they say around finances. Just pay attention to anything that comes up as a warning sign, and I might have to do another episode on that one because I'm honestly not entirely sure, because I'm like, how are you going to tell if somebody seems disorganized financially? I thought that was a great idea, but I'm like, okay, that one's a little bit harder to explain. They treat your business policy as optional. That's definitely something that you if you run into, go the other direction. You don't want that. Like the times that you expect to hear from them, or if you've got like if you're shipping something, you need an address or something at a certain point. If they're like, if they're delayed on that or late on that, policies like being paid up front for material, that's not an optional thing, you guys. Signing a contract, again, that's not optional. If they become defensive when payment terms are discussed, so like if you start bringing up money and they go on the defensive, that's a huge warning sign. Guys, trust your intuition. So red flags come up for a reason. That is your gut. That is your intuition telling you that, that this is possibly not going to work out. And sometimes when you're brand new in this, your intuition might just be you might just be a cautious person, and some things might actually not be problems. But if you've been running your business for a while, your intuition, your gut is going to know. And if you're desperate and you take on somebody who is a bad fit, and you might end up regretting it. So like desperation is not going to make your financial situation better, because then you're out the money and the time you put into it. Now also, you need to be willing to walk away from clients who aren't a great fit. It is not worth it to keep pushing on with a client. Like it's better to leave a job half completed than it is to continue working with somebody who's a bad fit. And I know you're going to be like, well, what if they give me a review? Well, if they're a bad fit, they're going to give you a bad review anyway, or they're going to, I will say it's sometimes better to make them happy and take a hit than it is, but you're going to have to weigh, like sometimes walking away is the best option. Sometimes it is better to just do the work and make them happy. And sometimes it's better to just, not take them in the first place. Usually it's just better not take them in the first place, but sometimes you don't know that ahead of time, right? Anyway, so if you find that you're constantly running into people who don't value your work, then consider raising your prices so that you attract people who do value what you put in and do value what you do. Okay, so the goal here is to spend less time chasing money and dealing with drama and managing conflict, and more time working with clients and customers and patients who respect your expertise and who pay you on time. And if you didn't see my previous episode on how to get people to pay, then go check that out. Go check that out. And I hope this has been helpful for you guys. I really do want to help you run your businesses in a way that makes it manageable and successful, and so that you can focus on the things that you're passionate about. And that's pretty much it, guys, for this episode. I will talk to you all later. Bye.